Hana pressed her face against the cold metal of the viewing port, staring down at the swirling clouds of Keros 3. The planet looked peaceful from up here, almost beautiful with its blue and green surface. But she knew better. Down there lived the most dangerous creatures in this part of the galaxy. "Still can't believe they sent us here," muttered her teammate Chris, floating over in the zero gravity. 3 expeditions already lost, all because of those things. Hana shuddered. The Void Stalkers were nightmares made real. Each one stood as tall as a building, with razor-sharp claws that could slice through starship hull like paper. Their black hide seemed to absorb light itself, making them nearly invisible until they struck. Every species in the galaxy knew to avoid Keros 3. It was a death world, plain and simple. "The research must continue," Commander Yuki said, entering the observation deck. "We need to understand these creatures if we ever hope to colonize worlds like this. The Federation is counting on us." Hana nodded, though fear twisted in her stomach. She had spent 3 years studying dangerous alien life, but nothing compared to the Void Stalkers. The footage from previous expeditions haunted her dreams. Massive shapes moving through fog, screams cut short, then silence. "Ma'am, you need to see this," called Technician Day from his console. His voice carried a strange note of confusion. The team gathered around the sensor display. Day pointed at a cluster of readings near the planet's equator. "These are life signs, definitely intelligent, but look at the location." Hana's breath caught. The signals came from the heart of Stalker territory, in a valley where the creatures were known to nest. "That's impossible. Nothing survives down there." "Could be equipment malfunction," suggested Chris. "Maybe leftover tech from the last expedition," but Day shook his head. "No, these readings are fresh. Someone is alive down there, and they've been there for months." Commander Yuki frowned at the display. "Run a deep scan. Check for any escape pods or emergency shelters from recent crashes." Minutes passed as the sensors probed deeper. Finally, Day looked up with wide eyes. "Commander, there was a cargo transport that went down 2 years ago. The manifest shows. 1 survivor made it to the surface." "Survivor status?" Yuki asked sharply. "According to this, it was a single human, male. Name was Jiho Park, civilian engineer." The room fell silent. A human, alone on Keros 3 for 2 whole years. It seemed like a cruel joke. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as the curious species, always poking their noses where they didn't belong, but they were also surprisingly tough. "No way he's still alive," Chris whispered. "Not down there. Not with those things." But the sensors didn't lie. Something intelligent moved through that valley, following regular patterns that suggested a settlement. Hana watched the readings pulse steadily on the screen, each beat representing impossible survival against odds that had crushed much larger, better-equipped expeditions. "Should we attempt contact?" asked Day. Commander Yuki stared at the planet. Below, her expression troubled. "If there's even a chance someone survived down there, we have a duty to investigate. But I won't risk the whole team on what might be sensor ghosts." Hana found herself speaking before she could stop herself. "I'll go." Everyone turned to stare at her. Yuki raised an eyebrow. "Absolutely not. It's far too dangerous." "Someone has to confirm these readings," Hana insisted, surprised by her own boldness. "If a human really survived 2 years with the Stalkers, we need to know how. It could change everything we understand about this planet." The possibility hung in the air like electricity, terrifying and thrilling at the same time. 3 days later, Hana found herself creeping through the shuttle bay at 0300 hours, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had waited until the night shift when only automated systems monitored the smaller craft. Her fingers trembled as she powered up the stealth shuttle, praying the sound dampeners would mask the engine noise. The descent through Keros 3's atmosphere felt like falling into hell itself. Thick clouds swirled around her tiny ship, and lightning crackled dangerously close to the hull. But Hana pressed on, following the coordinates where the mysterious life signs originated. Her scanner showed the settlement lay in a valley surrounded by dense forest, exactly where no sane person would ever build anything. As she broke through the cloud layer, Hana gasped. Below her stretched a scene that made no sense at all. Instead of the fortified bunker she expected, she saw a small wooden house with smoke curling peacefully from its chimney. Gardens spread out in neat rows around the building, filled with what looked like vegetables and flowers. A stream bubbled nearby, feeding into a small pond that reflected the morning sunlight. "This can't be real," she whispered, checking her instruments twice. But the readings confirmed it. Someone lived here in the open without any visible defenses. Hannah landed her shuttle behind a cluster of tall trees, keeping it hidden from the house. She grabbed her scanner and emergency beacon, then crept through the underbrush toward the impossible settlement. Every shadow made her jump. Every rustling leaf could hide a void stalker ready to pounce. Through her binoculars, she watched the house for hours. Finally, the front door opened, and a figure stepped onto the wooden porch. Hannah adjusted the focus and nearly dropped the binoculars in shock. It was definitely human, a young man with messy black hair and clothes that looked homemade. He stretched and yawned like someone who had just enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep. The man she assumed was Jiho walked to his garden and began picking vegetables, humming softly to himself. He moved with the relaxed confidence of someone completely at home. This was insane. How could anyone be so calm in the most dangerous place in the galaxy? Then Hannah heard it, a low rumbling sound that made her blood freeze. She knew that sound. From the expedition footage, void stalkers were coming. "Run," she whispered desperately, though Jiho couldn't hear her. "Please, just run." But Jiho didn't run. He didn't even look concerned as the rumbling grew louder. Instead, he continued picking tomatoes from his garden, occasionally glancing toward the forest edge with what looked like mild interest. The first stalker emerged from the tree line, and Hannah had to bite her hand to keep from screaming. The creature was even more terrifying in person than in any recording. It stood 3 times taller than Jiho, its black hide seeming to absorb the sunlight. Muscles rippled under its skin as it moved with deadly grace. Its eyes glowed like yellow fire, and claws the size of swords scraped against the ground. A second stalker appeared, then a third. They formed a loose circle around the garden, their massive heads turning to focus on the tiny human among the vegetables. Hannah fumbled for her emergency beacon, ready to call for immediate evacuation. This was about to become a massacre. But Jiho just kept picking tomatoes. The lead stalker took a step closer, and Hannah held her breath. This was it. In seconds, she would witness the horrible death of the last human on Keros 3. She closed her eyes, unable to watch, waiting for the sounds of violence. Instead, she heard Jiho's voice, calm and friendly, drifting across the garden. "Good. Morning, beautiful. Did you sleep well?" Hannah's eyes snapped open. The human was talking to the stalkers like they were old friends. Hannah's scanner slipped from her numb fingers as she watched the impossible scene unfold. The lead void stalker, the one she was certain would tear Jiho apart, lowered its massive head and made a sound she had never heard before. It was almost like purring, but deeper, rumbling through the ground like distant thunder. Jiho reached up and actually touched the creature's snout. Touched it! His small human hand looked tiny against the stalker's dark hide, but the beast didn't flinch. Instead, it leaned into his touch, yellow eyes closing in what could only be described as contentment. I know, Jiho said softly, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "You're hungry. Let me get your breakfast ready." The other 2 stalkers settled down near his porch, their enormous bodies moving with surprising grace. They folded their legs beneath them, like cats curling up in sunny spots, though each one was large enough to crush the entire house if they wanted to. Jiho disappeared inside his home and returned carrying 3 large buckets. Whatever was inside smelled strongly of fish and meat. He walked calmly between the resting giants, setting a bucket in front of each one. The stalkers began eating with delicate movements, careful not to spill anything on his garden. Hannah's mind refused to process what she was seeing. These were the same creatures that had destroyed 3 military expeditions, the same monsters that every species in the galaxy feared. Yet here they were, having breakfast like domestic pets. "This has to be a dream," she whispered, pinching herself hard enough to leave a mark. But the scene continued playing out before her eyes. After the stalkers finished eating, Jiho collected the empty buckets and sat down on his porch steps. The largest stalker, clearly the alpha female, moved closer and rested her head near his feet. Jiho began scratching behind what looked like ear flaps on the side of her massive skull. "How are you feeling today, Luna?" he asked, using the same tone people used with beloved pets. "Getting close to your time, aren't you?" Hannah quickly retrieved her fallen scanner and focused it on the alpha female. The readings made her gasp. The creature was definitely pregnant, and judging by the biosigns, very close to giving birth. Her scanner also detected something else that made no sense. Medical equipment readings from inside Jiho's house. Sophisticated medical equipment. The alpha female made a low, whining sound and shifted uncomfortably. Jiho immediately stood up, his expression changing to one of concern. "Easy, girl. Let me take a look," he said, moving his hands gently along her swollen belly. The massive predator remained perfectly still, trusting this tiny human completely. Jiho frowned and hurried back into his house. He returned with what looked like a medical kit and some kind of scanning device. Hannah watched in amazement as he performed what appeared to be a pregnancy check on a creature that could bite him in half without effort. "Okay, Luna, I think today might be the day," Jiho announced. "Let's get you comfortable." The other two stalkers immediately became alert, rising to their feet and moving to flank the pregnant female. But their posture wasn't aggressive. They were protective, worried about their packmate. Jiho began setting up what looked like a birthing area in his garden, laying out clean blankets and positioning his medical equipment. The pregnant stalker followed his gentle guidance, settling into the prepared space with obvious trust. "That's it, good girl," Jiho encouraged, checking his instruments. "Everything looks normal. Your babies are going to be beautiful." Hannah stared through her binoculars, unable to believe what she was witnessing. A human was about to help deliver void stalker cubs. The most feared predators in the galaxy were trusting their young to a member of a species they supposedly killed on sight. Nothing in her years of xenobiology training had prepared her for this moment. Hannah watched for 3 more hours as Jiho helped Luna through her labor. The sight was both terrifying and beautiful. This tiny human gently coaching a creature the size of a building through the birth of her cubs. When the first baby stalker finally emerged, no bigger than a house, cat but already showing the distinctive black hide, Hannah found tears streaming down her face. She had to know how this was possible. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, but her curiosity won out. Scientists throughout the galaxy would never believe this without proof. Taking a deep breath, Hannah stood up from her hiding spot and walked slowly toward the garden. The moment she stepped into the clearing, all 3 adult stalkers snapped to attention. Their yellow eyes locked onto her, and she heard the deep rumble that meant danger. Luna, exhausted from giving birth, still managed to raise her head protectively over her newborn cub. Hannah froze, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. This was it. She was about to become another casualty statistic. Her legs felt like water, and she couldn't have run even if her brain had been working properly. But Jiho simply looked up from where he was cleaning the newborn cub and smiled. "Oh, hello there. I wondered when you'd come down to visit." You knew I was here?" Hannah managed to stammer. "Storm spotted your shuttle landing this morning," Jiho said, nodding toward the middle stalker. "He's our scout. Nothing gets past him in this valley." The stalker Jiho called Storm made a series of low clicking sounds. To Hannah's amazement, Jiho responded with similar clicks and what sounded like humming tones. He says, "You've been watching." "Just all day," Jiho translated casually. "Storm was worried you might be a threat, but I told him you were just curious." Hannah's mouth fell open. "You can talk to them?" "Sure can. Took me about 6 months to figure out the basics." Jiho gently placed the cleaned cub next to Luna, who immediately began nuzzling her baby. Their language is actually pretty complex. They use sound, scent, and body position all together. The largest male stalker, the one Jiho hadn't introduced, yet took a step toward Hannah. She wanted to run, but her feet seemed glued to the ground. The creature lowered its massive head until it was level with hers, studying her with those burning yellow eyes. "Easy, Rex," Jiho said calmly. "She's friendly. This is Luna, the new mum. Storm is our lookout, and Rex here is the old warrior of the group. He's just being protective." Rex made a deep huffing sound and extended his head toward Hannah. She realized, with shock, that he wanted to smell her. "Go ahead," Jiho encouraged. "Let him get your scent. He needs to know you're not dangerous." With trembling hands, Hannah held out her palm. Rex's nose, easily as large as her entire head, sniffed her carefully. His breath was warm and smelled surprisingly pleasant, like fresh earth after rain. After a moment, he made a satisfied grunt and stepped back. "Good boy," Jiho said, scratching Rex behind his ear flaps. The massive predator actually leaned into the touch like a giant dog. "This is impossible," Hannah whispered. "They're supposed to be killing machines. Every expedition that's come here." "Never tried to understand them," Jiho finished. "They just showed up with weapons and loud noises. These guys are actually pretty peaceful when you're not threatening their territory or their family." Storm made another series of clicks, and Jiho laughed. "Storm says you smell nervous. Don't worry, they won't hurt you. You're under my protection now." Hannah looked around at the three massive creatures, any one of which could end her life in seconds, and felt something she never expected on Keros 3. She felt safe. Later that evening, after Luna and her cub had settled, comfortably in a nest Jiho had prepared, he invited Hannah into his home. She expected to find some kind of high-tech fortress inside, but instead discovered a cozy living space that looked surprisingly normal. Handmade furniture filled the rooms, books lined wooden shelves, and the smell of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. "I know what you're thinking," Jiho said, lighting an oil lamp as darkness fell. "Where are all the weapons and security systems?" Hannah nodded, still trying to process everything she had witnessed. "How do you survive here without any defenses?" Jiho pulled out a thick notebook from a shelf and set it on his wooden table. The cover was worn and stained from constant use. "This is how, 2 years of watching, learning, and most importantly, listening." He opened the notebook, revealing page after page of detailed observations written in neat handwriting. Sketches of stalker body language filled the margins, along with notes about their sounds and behaviors. "When my transport crashed, I was terrified," Jiho admitted, settling into a chair across from Hannah. "I hid in the wreckage for 3 days, waiting for rescue. But on the 4th day, I saw something that changed everything." He flipped to an early page showing a crude sketch of adult stalkers surrounding something small. "I watched a family group find an injured cub that had fallen into a ravine. They spent hours carefully pulling it out, then took turns caring for it. These supposed monsters were gentle as could be with their own kind." Hannah studied the sketches, amazed by the detail. "You observed them for weeks?" "Months," Jiho corrected. "I realized that every previous expedition had made the same mistake. They landed with big ships, loud engines, heavy weapons. They invaded stalker territory like they owned the place." He turned several pages, showing diagrams of what looked like territorial boundaries. "See, the stalkers have very clear rules about their land. This whole valley is their nursery ground. It's where they raise their young and care for pregnant mothers. Of course they attacked anyone who showed up with weapons." "But how did you make contact?" Hannah asked, leaning forward with fascination. Jiho smiled and pointed to another sketch, showing himself sitting very still while a stalker approached cautiously. "Patience. I started by just sitting at the edge of their territory, doing nothing threatening. I brought no weapons, made no sudden movements. After 2 weeks, Storm finally came to investigate." The next pages showed a progression of interactions, Jiho offering food, helping with minor injuries, even building shelter for stalkers during bad weather. "The breakthrough came when I found Rex caught in some fallen trees after a storm," Jiho explained. "He was hurt and couldn't free himself. I spent 6 hours carefully cutting him loose and treating his wounds." "That must have been terrifying." Hannah said, "It was. But Rex never once tried to hurt me, even when I was causing him pain while cleaning his cuts. That's when I knew these weren't mindless killers. They understand intention." Jiho flipped to pages covered with phonetic symbols and musical notations. "Their language is beautiful once you learn it. They sing to their cubs, tell stories to each other, even have what I think are jokes. This changes everything we know about them, Hana whispered. It should change how we approach all unknown species, Jiho said seriously. Every expedition that came here assumed the worst. They saw big teeth and claws and decided these were monsters to be destroyed or avoided. But intelligence comes in many forms. He showed her recent pages documenting Luna's pregnancy, Storm's scouting patterns, and Rex's role as protector. They're not that different from us, really. They love their families, protect their homes, and care for their community. Outside, they could hear the soft rumbling of stalker voices as the pack settled down for the night. Tomorrow I'll show you something even more amazing, Jiho promised. The peaceful morning shattered when military shuttles roared overhead, their engines screaming like banshees. Hana looked up in horror as 3 heavily armed craft descended toward the valley, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. She had forgotten to check in with her team, and now they were coming to rescue her. No, 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 she whispered, grabbing her communicator. But it was too late. The lead shuttle was already landing in Jiho's garden, crushing his carefully tended vegetables under its massive weight. Commander Tay emerged first, followed by 6 armed soldiers in full combat gear. Their weapons were already powered up, energy, readings visible even from a distance. Behind them came more personnel carrying heavy equipment that Hana recognized as military-grade beast suppressors. "Hana," Commander Tay shouted through his helmet speaker, "step away from the human and get to safety. We're detecting massive predator signatures all around you." Luna, who had been peacefully nursing her cub near the porch, raised her head at the loud voices and mechanical sounds. Her yellow eyes fixed on the armed strangers, and she made a low warning growl that seemed to shake the ground itself. Storm appeared from the tree line, moving with deadly silence despite his enormous size. Rex emerged from the other side of the clearing, positioning himself between the soldiers and Jiho's house. Within seconds, the 3 stalkers had the military team surrounded. "Contact! Multiple hostiles!" one soldier yelled, raising his weapon. Toward Luna. "Wait!" Hana screamed, running toward the soldiers with her hands raised. "Don't shoot, they're not attacking!" But Commander Tay was already giving orders. "Suppression formation. Protect the civilians. These creatures are extremely dangerous." The soldiers spread out, their weapons humming as they charged to full power. The sound made all 3 stalkers tense up, their muscles coiling like springs, ready to unleash devastating force. "Commander, please listen to me," Hana pleaded, reaching the military group. "These aren't wild animals, they're intelligent. They won't hurt us if we don't threaten them." "Are you insane?" Tay snapped. "Look at the size of those things. One. Swipe from those claws and you're dead." Luna rose to her full height, towering over the soldiers like a living mountain. Her cub whimpered behind her, sensing the tension. Storm and Rex moved closer, their low growls creating a harmony that seemed to vibrate through everyone's bones. "Target the alpha female," Tay ordered. "If we take her down, the others might retreat." "No!" Both Hana and Jiho shouted at the same time. But Jiho didn't wait for arguments. He stepped directly into the line of fire, placing himself between Luna and the soldiers' weapons. The sight of a single human protecting a massive predator left everyone frozen in shock. Then Jiho began to sing. The sounds that came from his throat weren't quite human, deep harmonic tones mixed with clicking sounds and melodic whistles. It was the stalker language, but somehow Jiho made it even more beautiful than when the creatures themselves spoke it. Luna's aggressive posture immediately softened. She lowered her head and responded with gentle, rumbling sounds. Storm and Rex joined in, creating a complex 3-part harmony that filled the valley with music instead of violence. "Stand down," Jiho said firmly to the soldiers, his voice carrying an authority that made even Commander Tay hesitate. "You're in their home, show some respect." The stalkers slowly began to back away, but they didn't flee. Instead, they formed a wide circle around the entire group, humans and aliens together. Their posture was protective rather than threatening, like guardians watching over everyone in the clearing. "Impossible," one soldier whispered, lowering his weapon. "They're actually protecting us." Commander Tay stared at the scene in disbelief, his finger frozen over his weapon's trigger as the galaxy's most feared predators sang lullabies around them all. The tension in the clearing was thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Tay kept his weapon lowered but ready, his eyes darting between the three massive stalkers who had positioned themselves around the group. His soldiers remained frozen, unsure whether they were prisoners or under protection. "Someone better start explaining what's happening here," Tay said through gritted teeth, his voice tight with confusion and fear. Jiho stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. Behind him, Luna made soft crooning sounds to her frightened cub. "Commander, I need you to understand something important. Everything your people think they know about Void Stalkers is wrong." "Wrong?" Tay laughed bitterly. "I've seen the footage from 3 failed expeditions. These things tore apart entire military units." Storm, the scout stalker, made a series of clicking sounds mixed with low tones. Jiho listened carefully, then nodded before turning back to the commander. "Storm wants to know why your people always come here with weapons and loud machines. He says it frightens the mothers and babies." One of Tay's soldiers, a young woman named Yuki, lowered her rifle slightly. "You can actually understand what it's saying." "Not it. He," Jiho corrected gently. "Storm is a he, Luna is a she, and Rex is an elder male. They have names, personalities, and families just like we do." Rex, the largest of the 3, made a deep rumbling sound that seemed almost sad. Jiho's expression grew serious as he listened. "Rex remembers the first expedition that came here," Jiho translated. "It was during mating season 3 years ago. The ships landed right in the middle of their breeding grounds." Hana felt her heart sink as understanding began to dawn. "The nursery valley. This whole area is where they raise their young." "Exactly," Jiho said. "Imagine if aliens landed spacecraft in a human hospital's maternity ward and started waving weapons around. How would we react?" Commander Tay's expression shifted from anger to uncertainty. "You're saying they were defending their territory?" Luna made gentle sounds while nuzzling her newborn cub. Jiho smiled sadly as he listened. "Luna says the first expedition killed 2 pregnant mothers and destroyed several nests. The stalkers fought back because they thought humans were there to wipe out their species." The weight of this revelation hit the soldiers hard. Yuki actually took a step back, her weapon hanging loose in her hands. We were the invaders?" "Every single time," Jiho confirmed. "The second expedition came during another breeding season and made the same mistake. They saw the stalkers protecting their young and assumed they were being hunted. The third expedition brought even bigger weapons, which made the stalkers even more desperate to protect their families." Storm approached Commander Tay slowly. His massive head lowered in what Jiho had learned was a gesture of peaceful communication. The commander instinctively raised his weapon, but Jiho quickly stepped between them. "He's not threatening you," Jiho said firmly. "Storm wants to show you something." The stalker made a complex series of sounds, his voice carrying notes of grief and longing. As he spoke, tears actually formed in his glowing yellow eyes. "Storm is telling you about his mate." Jiho translated, his own voice thick with emotion. "She was killed in the second expedition along with their unborn cubs. He's been alone ever since." The clearing fell silent except for the wind through the trees. Commander Tay stared at Storm, seeing not a monster, but a grieving widower. The weapon in his hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. "They're not killers," Jiho continued. "They're parents, partners, and community members. They hunt for food like any predator, but they've never attacked anyone who didn't threaten their families first." Rex made approving sounds and gently touched Jiho's shoulder with one massive claw, carefully, lovingly, like a grandfather patting a grandchild. "My God," Commander Tay whispered, finally lowering his weapon completely. "What have we done?" 2 weeks after the tense standoff in the valley, a new ship arrived on Keros 3. This one landed gently outside the stalker territory, its engines quiet and respectful. Dr. Mira Kim stepped out carrying recording equipment, hand notebooks instead of weapons. Her approach as different from the previous expeditions as night from day. "So you're the human who befriended the galaxy's most feared predators," Mira said, shaking Jiho's hand as Storm watched curiously from nearby. "The scientific community is calling your work revolutionary." Jiho scratched behind Rex's ear as the old warrior rumbled contentedly. I just treated them like the intelligent beings they are. Humans have always been good at making friends with species others fear. Mira set up her equipment carefully, noting how the stalkers observed her every move with interest, rather than hostility. Luna approached with her cub, now 2 weeks old, and already showing curiosity about the new human. "Remarkable," Mira whispered, documenting Luna's behavior. "She's letting me near her offspring. That level of trust took you months to build." "Actually, it's because you came the right way," Jiho explained. "No weapons, no threatening sounds, and you asked permission before entering their territory. Storm told them you were different from the others." Over the following days, Mira witnessed things that would reshape xenobiology forever. She watched Jiho teach basic human words to the stalkers, who seemed to enjoy learning new sounds. Storm became particularly good at mimicking human laughter, though his version sounded like distant thunder. "This changes everything we thought we knew about first contact," Mira recorded in her daily logs. "Humans don't just survive encounters with unknown species, they actively seek to understand and connect with them." The breakthrough came when Storm led them to a cave system deep in the mountains. The stalkers had been watching Jiho's crude mining attempts to gather materials for repairs to his crashed ship. What they showed him made Mira's jaw drop. "These are veins of pure tritanium," she gasped, scanning the cave walls. "And that looks like crystallized energy cores. This cave system contains enough rare minerals to power entire space stations." Storm made proud clicking sounds while Rex guided them deeper into the tunnels. The stalkers had known about these riches for generations, but had no use for them. To them, the caves were simply safe places to weather storms and store food. "They want to help," Jiho translated as Luna made gentle sounds. "Storm says if we can use these materials to help other humans, they're happy to share. They just want us to be careful not to damage their nesting areas." Within days, they had worked out an incredible partnership. The stalkers would guide human mining teams to the richest deposits, while keeping them away from sensitive breeding grounds. In return, Jiho established a medical station to treat injured stalkers and help with difficult births. Mira documented every aspect of the collaboration, amazed by how naturally humans and stalkers worked together. "Other species approach the HFYs unknown with weapons and fear," she noted. "Humans approach it with curiosity and open hands." The first successful joint mining operation yielded enough rare materials to fund a permanent research station. But more importantly, it proved that the galaxy's most dangerous predators could become humanity's most valuable allies. Storm brought his pack to help move heavy equipment, their strength making the work 10 times easier. Rex used his keen senses to detect unstable tunnel sections, preventing several cave-ins. Luna, despite having a young cub, insisted on helping by using her knowledge of the cave systems to find the safest routes. "In 6 months, we've accomplished more here than 3. A military expeditions managed in years," Mira reported to the Galactic Council. "Not through conquest, but through friendship." As she watched Jiho's cub playing with Luna's offspring, under the watchful eyes of 3 massive predators, Mira smiled. Humans had done it again, turned enemies into family through nothing more complicated than kindness and respect. 1 year. After first contact, Keros 3 had transformed into something no one could have imagined. What was once considered the most dangerous planet in the sector now hosted the galaxy's most unique colony. Hana stood on the observation deck of the new research station, watching scenes that still took her breath away. In the valley below, human children ran through gardens, while young stalkers bounded alongside them like oversized puppies. The sound of laughter mixed with happy stalker chirps filled the air, creating a symphony of joy that echoed off the mountain walls. "Still can't believe this is real sometimes," said Jiho, joining Hana at the window. In the past year, he had become the colony's unofficial ambassador to the stalker community, though he insisted he was just a translator between friends. Down in the playground area, 6-year-old Gina was playing hide-and-seek with Storm's youngest. Cub, a creature already twice her size but gentle as a lamb. The cub deliberately made obvious hiding spots, peeking out from behind trees too small to conceal him, making Gina giggle as she pretended to search. The children adapted faster than anyone expected, Hannah observed, making notes in her ever-present research journal. They don't see the stalkers as monsters at all. Kids are smart that way, Jiho replied. They judge by actions, not appearances. Near the medical center, Dr. Mira was conducting her weekly health check on the stalker families. Luna's cub, now a healthy yearling, sat patiently while Mira examined his teeth and claws. His mother watched protectively, but without concern. She trusted the human healer completely. The colony had grown to include 50 human families, each carefully selected for their openness to interspecies cooperation. Engineers worked alongside stalkers to build homes that accommodated both species. Teachers developed programs where human children learned stalker language, while young stalkers picked up basic human words. Contact from the morning mining team came a voice over the communication system. It was Bora, one of the newer colonists reporting from the mountain caves. Storm's pack found another rich vein of energy crystals. They're marking it for us now. The mining partnership had exceeded all expectations. With stalker guidance, the colonists had located mineral deposits worth billions of credits. But more importantly, they had done it without harming the planet's ecosystem or disturbing the creatures' traditional nesting grounds. In the distance, Rex led a patrol around the colony's perimeter. The old warrior had appointed himself as chief security officer, and no threat had ever gotten past his watchful guard. Pirates and raiders who still thought Keros 3 was easy prey quickly learned otherwise when they encountered patrols of protective stalkers. "Emergency beacon from Sector 7, announced the communication officer. "Merchant vessel under attack by raiders." Jiho activated his communicator, speaking in the complex tones of stalker language. Within minutes, Storm and 2 other adult stalkers were airborne, their powerful limbs carrying them swiftly toward the distress signal. The raiders never stood a chance against creatures who could tear through starship hulls with their bare claws. "Merchant vessel reports raiders retreating," came the update 20 minutes later. "All threats neutralized, no casualties." Hannah smiled as she watched human and stalker children playing together in perfect harmony below. Representatives from dozens of worlds had visited the colony, trying to understand how humanity had accomplished the impossible. The answer was always the same. They had approached with open hearts instead of closed fists. "The galaxy's changing because of what we've built here," Hannah said softly. "Other species are starting to reconsider their approach to first contact." As the sun set over Keros 3, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, families of both species gathered for the evening meal. Human voices mixed with stalker songs in a celebration of friendship that proved the universe's greatest treasures weren't found in distant stars. They were found in the courage to reach out to those who seemed different and discover they weren't so different after all.